We need to change how we see food. See food as fuel and not necessarily as our entertainment and joy. Because that's really where we get unhealthy and we don't feel good and we get all these medical conditions. It's because we start eating these foods as enjoyment and entertainment, and we're not seeing food as a fuel to make us feel great and good.
You're watching the Dr. Jake podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I am Theresa. I am a mom, a wife to a cancer fighter, and I'm here with Dr. Jake to talk about the worst holiday foods and how we can replace them. Dr. Jake.
Yeah, so this is going to be an exciting topic for me today and will be quite interesting because I see my patients are doing really great. They're feeling awesome. And then the holidays come and they really don't know how to have certain good alternatives or how to eat or not. So usually when they come to see me January and February, they're like, yeah, you're going to be unhappy with me. I really feel yucky and I'm really going to need a real good reboot because I really ate really junky. It's going to be exciting to talk today about some things that we could do that are just better, healthier alternatives to make people still feel good during the holidays.
You know, it's funny that you say that because I am one of the same people. Like, I eat healthy, because it makes me feel better. And then the holidays will come around and I eat, I cheat on all the foods
Mhm.
and then I feel like garbage. And then I go like, how is this celebrating anything when I feel like crap and I'm too tired to like want to converse with the family and I'm bloated and my
Mhm.
stomach's hurting. I've been trying over the last couple of years to be like that family member that comes over and like brings like the alternative mashed potatoes, like these. But you know what? I'm telling you, the last couple of years I've been doing it and everyone loves the food that I bring. And some
Mhm.
of them don't even know that it's got a little less of this or a little extra of this that's different than what the usual
Mhm.
recipes are.
Right.
So I'm excited to talk with you too, because I think I have some things to contribute to this conversation.
Sure.
But first, we want to remind our listeners, like despite the fact that we have a doctor here on this podcast sharing his insight onto the holiday foods and what we should ideally be eating or not eating, we want to remind you that this is just a podcast, right, Dr. Jake?
Yeah, so this is just a podcast. We're not going to give any specific treatment advice or how you need to eat for your specific type. So if you have any detailed questions that you want and set up a visit with us, visit our website, integrativemedica.com. Find our phone number there, call our receptionist to set up a visit with me or Dr. Hirsch, and we also do virtual visits.
Right. So, like, this is going to be really general guidelines, but there might be people that may not even shouldn't even be able to eat some of the things that we're talking about here because they have medical conditions that this would make them
Mhm.
really sick still. So,
Right.
definitely call Dr. Jake if you need a special diet and you want to know how to do that with the holidays. Speaking of the holidays, what are you doing? What's your holiday looking like this time of year? 2021,
So this has been a
December.
really interesting year for me. It's really sunny and warm and just interesting. So I haven't really gotten into the Christmas spirit yet, interesting enough, but there's a lot of things that we do have planned that we are going to do. Typically, we have a lot of family around in this area, so we're going to be visiting my mom and dad, my wife's mom and dad, and siblings. My wife has tons of siblings, so we meet up with them and have a big fat family gathering. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Also, something that we really have been doing as a new tradition here is where we live is there's some places that really have this spectacular light shows going on during the holidays. So we're going to go to that and watch some of these light shows. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
I experienced that this year or last year because we've lived in this area for a year now. And by the
Mhm.
way, Dr. Jake, you say that it's warm and sunny, but coming from I'm a San Diegan. This
Yeah,
is
it's
still
nothing like
really,
that.
really dang cold. But there's just no snow right now, so that's the
Mhm.
that's the funny part.
Mhm.
But yeah, we got to go to like a drive-through light show. We'd never had anything like this in San Diego. So it was
Mhm.
really neat where you get to take your car and you go through this like maze basically. And it's all these lights and they go over and you go through tunnels and it was really neat. And then there's music. You get to put your radio on and then
Yeah.
you get to listen to the holiday music with the lights kind of playing around with it and kind of like it works together. Really fun. And then I heard that there's like ice castles and things that you can visit. So I'm really excited to
Right.
experience a white Christmas out here in
Right.
Utah, which is where we're recording from. Even though this is a virtual podcast, Dr. Jake and I are actually probably only like 20 minutes away from one another as we record. But I'm very excited about this topic of holiday foods And, just the holidays in general, like the fact that we're even having to talk about like the worst holiday, foods and the holidays being wrapped up with food. I know we were talking before we were recording, and you had some thoughts on that. I'd love for you to just share what you were thinking about just the whole concept of holidays and food.
So this is an interesting concept to me. Like we were talking about, my patients are feeling good, they're going great, they're loving life because they feel good, they're able to think well, they're not in pain, etc. They have good energy. And then the holidays come, and for some reason, they go off the bandwagon and start eating the foods that they're not supposed to. And this is an interesting concept, is that we put the holidays into this category of we eat lots of sugar and we eat really unhealthy, and that is supposed to make us happy. It's a really interesting concept there, is we need to kind of change our mindset of how we see the holidays and how we see traditions and change how we do them. Because a lot of times when we're, let's say, Thanksgiving or Christmas, we're just going to eat tons of sugar. Yeah, that might be fun at that time, but then we don't really feel good. Or we start gaining a lot of weight and then we have to lose a lot of that weight. Instead of just being like, okay, this is a holiday tradition, we're going to eat well, we're going to eat great food, but we're not going to start eating a lot of unhealthy foods. And we're going to start doing different activities and different traditions that don't just necessarily revolve around food. What I tell my patients a lot, and maybe many of the people listening today aren't going to like this, is we need to change how we see food. See food as fuel and not necessarily as our entertainment and joy, because that's really where we get unhealthy and we don't feel good and we get all these medical conditions. It's because we start eating these foods as enjoyment and entertainment, and we're not seeing food as a fuel to make us feel great and good.
That makes sense to me. And I think about, how our ancestors used to live, where, most of the sugar that they ate in the year was typically probably in the summertime when most of the fruit was abundant. And then what did that sugar do, right? Like that sugar, even though it was a natural form, it got their body to store up fat to prepare for the winter
Mhm.
where there wasn't much fruit, you know? And
Mhm.
that kind of got
Mhm.
them through. And yet here we are continuing to eat our fruit through the summer. And then we've got
Yeah.
holiday treats like 4th of July and some of these other things that are going on. And then we head into the winter. And instead of following our ancestors where we weren't eating a lot of sugar because it wasn't naturally available, now we're enjoying all these holidays where sugar is just this huge part of the holiday spirit. And we're
Mhm.
continually stocking up when we're actually supposed to be burning all of that during this time of year. And have to wonder if that plays a big role in why America is just so dang sick.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, okay, let's start off at the top. You wake up. I mean, obviously, there's lots of things that are happening throughout the holiday season, right? You're going to parties and you're having, Friendsgiving, and then you're moving, Thanksgiving, and then you're moving on to the Christmas season, and different things going on with work and friends and all of that. And then you have actually Christmas, and then you have like New Year's Eve, and you have New Year's Day, and all of that. So there's plenty of opportunities, I think, to eat holiday foods. It's not just a one day thing. But let's just take a look at actual Christmas Day, which I think is the most common holiday this time of year for most Americans. You wake up in the morning and you have breakfast. What are some of those worst foods that we're eating for Christmas breakfast? And what are some ways that we can improve that?
Yeah, so many times, let's start just on the processed meats. We start eating a lot. Many times, I don't know your family traditions, but mine are, you eat bacon and you eat sausage and you eat lots of eggs. Many times, you even maybe fry your eggs in the bacon oil and things like that. So let's talk about maybe some better options for processed meats. Let's say instead of like doing a sausage that's made out of pork, you can maybe do a chicken sausage, which is going to be much lower on that saturated fat, not be as inflammatory, and have a higher protein content compared to the pork, which is still going to be very tasty. Instead of like say the pork bacon, maybe you could go with more of a turkey bacon, which is lower in the fat content there. So those are some good alternatives there. I'm still fine with people having eggs and everything, maybe not fried in bacon oil or things like that, but that's a good option. And obviously, there's a ton of little sweet things that we do for breakfast, right? Waffles, pancakes, German pancakes, whatever. There's a lot of sweet things that we do there. And we can make better options. We could still maybe have those foods, but we just use better options, not necessarily healthy options, but options that are much better than the alternative. Let's say, for example, you want waffles for breakfast. You can do a waffle that is made out of pumpkin, and then you could also add almond flour to that instead of the traditional wheat flour to that. The almond flour is going to be higher in the good quality fats. It's going to be higher in protein. It's going to be higher in the fiber. And it's not going to spike your blood sugar as much. Also, you're not going to be able to eat as much of that specific waffle, so you're not going to get as much sugar in there. Some things you could add onto there is a good, healthy, grass-fed butter on top of there. If that's enough, great. If not, you could add like a pure maple syrup on top of there instead of the fake maple syrup. So those are some quick options. Also, let's say you're a whipped cream fan, and a lot of my patients tend to be really sensitive to dairy. You can do more of a coconut whipped cream, which can be a great alternative. And then instead of adding like processed sugar in there, maybe you can add a raw honey or pure maple syrup to sweeten it with. So these are some quick options there that I have done with my family that has made it still enjoyable to have an awesome breakfast, but it's a healthier choice.
I absolutely love coconut cream. And what we do is we just buy the canned, unsweetened. And when you look at like coconut milk in the cans, they have like coconut milk light, they have
Mm,
regular coconut milk, and then they have like the coconut milk cream. And you can get them sweetened or not, but we look for the unsweetened coconut cream, and it's just all the fat. There's none of the water in it. You have to kind
mhm,
of scoop it out with a spoon, but man, my husband's been really enjoying
great.
that, for
Hmm.
his, like, kind of an ice cream alternative, whipped cream alternative,
Yeah.
and, it already has so much flavor, we don't even sweeten it, it just tastes great by itself
Hmm.
as a whipped cream, but that's what we use, and I love pure maple syrup. I wonder, like, how many people have actually really tried pure maple syrup. I don't see why we need to sweeten it. It's so
Right.
naturally sweet, and I think it even has, like, minerals in it
Hmm.
too, because it actually comes from a tree, you know?
Yeah.
So there's
Hmm.
actually some vitamins like that are actually,
Hmm.
or I don't know, I guess minerals are not vitamins, but nutrients that are in there.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, great. I love that. Let's move on to, treats, right? Like throughout the day and throughout the holidays, we're going to parties and there's treats everywhere. What can you tell us about some of these treats? What are the worst
Yes.
ones? What can we do instead?
So yeah, so a lot of people like to have these little candies around the house, especially during the holidays, right? And everywhere you go, you have some fancy little Christmas candy. So that can be really bad news because then you're just pounding the sugar all day long. When you see that little candy, you're going to take it and eat it, and wherever you go in the house, you're going to get it. So I like to do is you can either go with a more natural candy. There's do exist. I wouldn't say they're necessarily healthier, but they're at least not going to have as much sugar in them, not have the high fructose corn syrup in them, and have all the food dyes that come into them that are a more natural alternative that you could have around the house. What I truly prefer better is just to have a lot of different varieties of fruits around the house. That's what we do for our kids. We have fruits all over, so when they want to snack on something, they could go grab an apple or a pear, or they can go grab a quick banana or a orange or whatever. We have these all over the house, so they're able to snack and they are able to get that little sweet craving taken care of. Also, a great alternative is you can have some nuts all over the house, spice nuts, make them fancy and interesting. Besides just raw nuts, make them taste really good to get the spice, and you can get a with a very light amount of sugar on them. I really like to do like instead of like a caramel nut or a caramelized nut, you can do more of a dark chocolate nut, which is going to have much lower sugar content and have the antioxidant capabilities there. So that's what I would like to do instead of having these little candies all over the house, have a lot more fruit around and have some more fancy nuts. That is really the best option. And then if that's not really the case, go with more natural candy.
What about cookies?
So cookies. So there's people who love cookies, right? That's a holiday thing, especially
I
sugar
like
cookies.
cookies.
So you like to make these little fancy little cookies, little gingerbread men, or little Christmas trees, or little bells, etc. So you don't necessarily have to take that out of your holiday traditions, but what you can do is make it into a healthier choice is what you can do. And we have this, and we give this to our neighbors. Is we made up a cookie treat, and maybe I can supply this to the after this video of this sugar cookie that is half the sugar. We also make it gluten free, and then we don't add any of the frosting on top of it. And our neighbors tell us that they love it, and we don't tell them that it has less sugar, and we don't tell them that it's gluten free. And they always tell us they really love it. So this is a great option. You can still have all that tradition that is involved, maybe making the cookies, cooking them, and then you could even decorate them with more healthy things besides frosting, and it could be a lot of fun, and it's a healthy alternative. Another thing is, let's say you love chocolate chip cookies. What we do is we have the sugar in chocolate chip cookies, and we replace, instead of the wheat flour, we add almond flour to it. We talked about how that is higher in fiber, protein, etc. So it's going to fill you much more quickly. But also we add, instead of the milk chocolate chips, we add dark chocolate chips. So it's a much lower sugar content, not necessarily really healthy, but it's a much better option than the traditional chocolate chip cookie.
I love that you don't tell them when you give it to them, because it is interesting how once somebody has in their head, like, oh, this is gluten free, or oh,
Right?
this is half the sugar, like there's already judgments that's been made, and they actually, that could color, I think, their perception of the cookie. So just give it to
Mm-hmm.
them, and they'll enjoy it. I know that I do the same thing with my own kids. Actually, it's like I don't let them know if I made it healthier, and they like it.
Mm-hmm.
They like it just fine. So love those ideas. Now, you had mentioned to me about gingerbread houses and an alternative that you guys do in your family, and I just loved this idea.
Yeah.
Please share it.
So we really like the idea of gingerbread houses. Our kids really like to do it. They like to get together with the family and friends and make gingerbread houses. But we're like, man, that's not really, it's pretty unhealthy. And they're just eating candy the whole time when they're doing that. And then they eat the gingerbread, not necessarily a very healthy choice there. So we started brainstorming, what can we do to still make it a lot of fun, but still be a lot of healthier for them. What we do is we set up little bird houses. So we get these little wooden houses, and then we have the kids decorate them, and they put the peanut butter and seeds on there. They decorate them however they want for the birds, and they have a lot of fun taking them out and putting them on the tree and watching the birds eat from them all winter long. So it was very enjoyable. We really like that. We're going to do that again this year.
Now, do these bird houses last through the spring when more birds come,
Yeah, they
or are they
do.
gone by
So
then?
you can put them out there during the winter time. You have the few birds that stay around here in Utah. So you do see birds during the winter here that haven't migrated. But then, yeah, they're just hanging out there all many times the last year. They hung out there all summer long. So yeah, they last a long time if you get a wooden box for them to munch on. And then you could also add more if the seeds run out.
I love it. I think that my kids would probably love it even more than a gingerbread house. Like the glee to be able to see the birds coming, and then to be able to enjoy it all year long versus, you make this gingerbread house and then it's gone within a week,
Yeah.
and you're done. You may not even remember it the next year. But
Hmm.
it seems like that's a gift that just keeps on giving, Dr. Jake. Love it. Okay, let's move on to beverages. I love the holiday beverages. We've got eggnogs, we've got soda, we got hot chocolate, we've got. I know you don't drink wine. I'm not a big alcohol drinker, but I do like some wine
Yeah.
sometimes as well.
Hmm.
So would love your thoughts on what's the worst ones out of here and how can we make them better.
So some of the worst ones out there are probably the hot chocolate, especially if you get one that's really high in sugar. Now you could get better options that aren't high in sugar. Or what I've been doing lately is, instead of my hot chocolate, I'm just making my Terra Brew, and maybe you can add a little sweetness to it, a little maple sugar to there to make it a little better option. Eggnog, yeah, that's extremely horrible. It's high in sugar and it's high in saturated fat. There's nothing healthy about eggnog, but you can make it better by getting like a almond milk eggnog, which isn't going to be as inflammatory. They tend to still add a lot of sugar to that. You can make your own though. That you could add maple syrup or pure honey, raw honey. That can be a great option there. And then let's talk about juices. So a lot of people like to have their sparkling juices around the holidays. I know my family really loves that. So some alternatives that we have been doing that is a healthier choice there. Get some carbonated water, and you can add a really healthy juice to it, like a pomegranate juice. Just a little bit in there to make it sweet. Blueberries juice or or cranberry juice, and you can add those to there and give you that holiday taste and that holiday feel. You could even add a little bit of cinnamon, nutmeg, and ginger to that drink to make it really taste really good, which is very low on the sugar content, but still very healthy instead of getting the other fruit juices that are out there or getting the sodas that are out there that are really high in sugar and high fructose corn syrup. So those are some good options for drinks.
You know, what I'm noticing about a lot of what you're talking about is really just making like homemade versions of what we're seeing in stores, right? It seems
Yeah,
like the ones in the stores are typically the ones that are going to have a lot more sugar in it, high fructose corn syrup, those types of things. But
yeah,
when we make them at home, we can control how much sugar we actually put in it and be able to create, healthier versions. I know with eggnog, I love eggnog, but dairy
hmm
really bothers my belly. And so I can enjoy it. It might taste good in my mouth, but I mean within a couple of minutes of drinking it, I've got a belly ache. So I love the alternative of using, like the almond milk versions that are out there.
hmm
And yeah, the sugar content's bad, but this inspires me. I mean, I could totally make, I think, an eggnog, like eggnog-ish. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily qualify as a pure, eggnog, but that same kind of feel with some almond
hmm
milk, maybe some coconut cream in there, add some cinnamon,
yeah,
that maple syrup. I could totally get that creamy kind of feel to it without it bothering my belly. And then
hmm
with hot chocolate, I've done this before where I actually get pure cocoa powder, like pure cacao, or like a cooking cocoa powder that doesn't have any sugar. It's just like essentially just like the powdered
right.
chocolate,
Uh-huh.
and then
Uh-huh.
adding that to some hot almond milk, and then just adding a little bit of, either stevia or maybe a little bit of monk fruit to sweeten it. And
hmm
it's delicious. It's delicious.
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned your taro brew. Now, for those of you who have been following this podcast, we did a podcast episode a while back on mushrooms and the benefits for them. And Dr. Jake is actually coming out with a mushroom beverage that he's calling Terra Brew. It's not officially out yet. We do have a form that you can fill out to get on the waiting list. I've had it. It's delicious and 100% agreed. Like, it's not naturally like just a sweet beverage. I would say it's not sweet nor not sweet, right? It's just kind of that in between. But I mean, adding a little bit of some stevia to it or a little bit of monk fruit, I think could totally, and then maybe even adding a little bit more chocolate, like cacao, could totally
hmm
turn it into a hot chocolate alternative. So I want to make sure that we put that in the description box. If you like that idea, give us a like, let us know, and make some comments below and let us know what you're thinking so far about some of the things that we've brought up. Which ones do you love? Which ones do you go, I'm not so sure about that? Would love to get your thoughts and anything that you guys do as an alternative as well that you can add to this conversation. Okay, now let's get to the holiday meal. Now, I know every family is a little bit different. I grew up in an Italian household. So when I was growing up, we ate lasagna. Like lasagna was the holiday meal. And I have some like Hispanic families where, tamales are actually the holiday meal. But for most Americans that I talk to, it seems like it's either turkey or ham as the main dish. Very, sometimes it's similar to Thanksgiving, sometimes a little varied. But I've listed some common things we might see around the holidays for meals. Some of it might seem more Thanksgiving, depends on your family, but Thanksgiving still fits in the holidays as well. So I want to list them. I'd love to get your thoughts
hmm
on each one of these. Let's talk about turkey, okay? What's bad about turkey and how can we make it better?
Turkey isn't necessarily bad. It's maybe sometimes how you eat it and what you add to it. So turkey is a usually a lower fat meat that's really high in protein. So I really like turkey. But some ways to eat it in a different way to make it healthier is to not eat the skin on the turkey. Like let's say you love the skin on the turkey, that's going to be higher in the fat content, and then many times sugars are added and glazes are added to the turkey skin. So you're getting the sugar and the added fat there. Also, sometimes people like to inject a ton of butter or they like to put sage butters. Now, you could choose a healthier butter. I'm not anti butter. It just depends on what type of butter you're getting. Like a grass fed butter is going to have a different fatty acid profile and a more anti inflammatory profile compared to a regular butter content. So that's great to put on the turkey there, and then add a lot of good quality herbs on there. Like sage is really good for you. Rosemary, thyme. These are really healthy herbs that can be really a great option. So I'm no no anti-turkey. I think that's a healthy alternative and can be great.
What do you think about, like, should they buy free range turkey? Should they buy organic? Is it okay to just get the
Yeah.
standard turkey that's at the, at your
So
local Walmart? What should you do about that?
yeah, so the best option obviously would be to try to get it a turkey that's actually eating good food, and that tends to be a organic turkey. But let's say you could get an organic turkey, but they're just hanging out in a cage, and that's not going to be as healthy of a meat content either. So if you could get a organic free range turkey, that would be the best option because the fatty acids are going to be the most anti-inflammatory, and it's going to be a healthier meat.
And the reason why I think, I want to make sure that a lot of our audience understands is that, when they're free range, they're able to peck, and birds were designed to peck. And so they're going to be eating worms and they're going to be eating insects in addition to the fruits and vegetables that they're given. And they're not
Mhm.
just like loading up on just like corn and soy
Yeah,
and some of these other types of grains that we feed these birds to fatten them up, make them taste good. But I mean, you are what you eat, right? And essentially, when you're eating a turkey that's just been eating nothing but corn and soy, and locked up in a cage, like that's what you're eating. It's the same thing.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
love that. Okay, ham. I see that a lot around the holidays. What are your thoughts on ham?
So I'm not a huge fan of ham. I think ham is a very unhealthy meat. Unfortunately, guys, I know people love their honey glazed ham, but I can't really say anything that's really healthy about it. So I would choose turkey over ham any day, or maybe a beef roast, something like that is going to be a healthier option than ham. Ham is highly processed. They add a lot of sugar to it, has a lot of preservatives in it. So yeah, I'm not a huge fan of doing that. If you are going to have a ham, I would prefer more of a like a pork tenderloin of sorts. But pork is just really high in fat, and it's very hard to get a good quality pork that's not going to be very pro-inflammatory and not healthy. So if you could choose another type of meat besides pork, I think it's a much better option.
Now, I've heard of some vegans out there who will do like a vegan roast and it's made from like seitan or some of these
Yeah,
other like
yeah.
vegan meats. What are your thoughts on the vegan meats?
In general, now there are some that can be generally healthy of sorts, but the majority of them, they are adding all kinds of preservatives and all kinds of gunk in them. You got to really look at it, and they love to do soy, and most of it is GMO soy. So I'm not a huge fan typically of these vegan type of meats because they don't tend to be made well. I have seen some meats that are much better that they're adding better quality legumes and things and they're tastier there. So things are changing, but in general, those vegan meats don't tend to be a very healthy choice.
Good to know. Thank you so much, Dr. Jake. Okay, stuffing. I know, it's big around Thanksgiving. Some people do it around Christmas as well. It's one of my most favorite side dishes to a holiday meal. Talk to me about that.
So my mom makes a pretty awesome stuffing. I think it's better than any stuffing on the planet, and it's gluten free, dairy free. It's full of spices and nuts and seeds, and it's just extremely healthy. So it's a great stuffing. But majority of stuffings is just high in, let's say it's a corn stuffing, or maybe it's a wheat type of stuffing. It's just mostly bread with lots of butter on it. So you can make an awesome healthy stuffing. You just got to find the right recipe. And I know you were talking about a really awesome recipe too about that.
Yeah, well, this is what I find is the problem. I love stuffing, but corn or wheat, which is the standard, what you see
Hmm.
standard in the store,
Yep.
both are very inflammatory. They spike up your sugar levels, your glucose levels, which make you feel like garbage and make you hungry again later. So now you're eating more, and you just really overfeed yourself. And then they have these seasoning packets a lot of times that come with
Hmm.
them that are just they've got, it's just garbage. It's not real. So I
Hmm.
prefer making a homemade, not a box kit stuffing, and we do it with almond. Now, there's some people that like their stuffing like not very mushy. They want to see the individual little squares. This is
Yep.
not going to work for you if that's the case. If you like mushy stuffing, which I like that
Hmm.
overcooked, really mushy stuffing. And then this is an easy way to swap it, is that you use almond flour and pasture raised eggs as your base instead. And then you do all the same things that you usually do. So you put the onions, you put the celery, you put the poultry type of
Hmm.
seasonings and so forth in it. And when you cook it and you bake it, it just, and again, you don't even have to tell. You don't even have to tell your family when you go over to the holiday meal. Just bring it. It looks like very cooked stuffing, very mushy, and it's delicious. You won't get bloated. It won't spike up your sugar levels. And it's one of my most favorite meals to bring or side dishes to bring to my family's holiday parties. All
Love
right,
it.
mashed potatoes. What's
So, mashed potatoes, and potatoes aren't necessarily bad, except if you've got a really inflammatory disorder. Potatoes tend to be inflammatory, but in general, they could be a healthy food. It just is how you prepare it. A lot of people they have a mashed potatoes and they take off all the skin. That's really where a lot of the nutrients is. So if you do like a mashed potato, leave the skin on there. Get like a Yukon potato that you can leave the skin on there. That can be really healthy, and you get all that nutrients in there. Again, add a good quality butter and like a grass-fed butter on there. Don't add a ton of sour cream or those type of things or tons of butter onto there. It can be really a good healthy treat. So it's not necessarily bad. It's just how you prepare it and how you eat it.
I make a mashed potato alternative for my family as well. And I don't tell the family all the secret things about it, except for the ones who are kind of geeky like me and love to know all like the healthy
Mhm.
alternatives. But what I do is I leave the skin on for sure. And instead of using milk, I do use an unsweetened almond milk. And again, I
Mhm.
do that because milk bothers my belly and it's also inflammatory and all the other things, right? So I'll use an almond milk but I'll use about half the amount that you would with than you would with like a regular milk. And then what I
Mhm.
do to kind of cover up any possible strains of almond flavor that might be in there is then I also do a free range organic chicken bone stock.
Nice.
And I add that to it. So that kind of adds a little bit of that chicken flavor, kind of salts it up a little bit, covers up a little
Mhm.
bit of that possible almond in there. And and then you can add the butter and the salt and the other things that you might like to add. But that's how I do it. And everyone loves my mashed potatoes
Mhm.
and they don't
Mhm.
know. They don't know.
They're
So it makes
great.
me feel good. All
Yeah.
right, yams. That's a very common holiday treat, and
Yeah.
I think yams in general, like, are healthy, but obviously some of us are doing some of the things that are not making it healthy. Can you expand on some of that?
Yeah, so yams are extremely healthy food. It's high in nutrients, so it's good. I like yams, but what we do usually around Thanksgiving or Christmas dinners is we love to add like marshmallows on top of it. We like to add tons of sugar with it, and that's just ruin the yam on this nutritional level. So what I like to do is I like to just add butter to it. Again, a good quality butter, and we sometimes add certain pecans or almonds to it to give it a little crunch to make it taste good. Sometimes, if I really need it sweet, which I don't really need most of the time, but some of my kids like to, we add some raw honey to it that makes it really tasty. So you can still have a really sweet yam if you really love that. Just add some raw honey to it, and you can replicate that flavor for yourself.
I'm a big fan of adding, instead of butter, I really like coconut butter in it. I
Oh,
think that
okay.
the yam and the coconut work really well together, and that coconut butter can give it just a slightly
Hmm.
sweeter kind of. I don't know why. I mean, because I know that coconut butter isn't
Sounds
sweet
good.
itself, but that coconut essence kind of just feels sweeter somehow
Hmm.
to it. And I think it works really well. My kids love that. Okay, green bean casserole. We see this. It's a classic, horrible dish that everyone hates, but somebody still brings it, and somehow we still eat it around the holidays. Thoughts on that?
I don't have a ton of thoughts on that specifically. I always do have it. I don't usually eat it at Thanksgiving dinner, but really, I would just eat the pure green bean. It's really healthy. What how I like to eat green beans is very simple. You just cook it real quick, flash heat it on the stove. You make it just barely change color in the green, and it still is a little bit of dante. And you just add some olive oil and salt on there, and that's
Yum.
how I like to eat my green beans, and it tastes a thousand times better to me than the green bean casserole. So I don't necessarily do the green bean casserole. I just have green beans done in that way, and I love it.
I think that's great. And it's funny. It's the meal that like when you talk to other people, it's like, oh man, why are they bringing that? But we still continue to do it. And I think
Yeah.
your alternative just is going to taste better in the first place. And it
Mhm.
goes back to the idea of homemade, right? Homemade versus anything else. Okay, so
Mhm.
we're going to finish this off with bread rolls and gravy. What can you do to help us out with those bread rolls and gravy?
you can make healthier gravy options, not necessarily a way healthy one if you're going to make it out of the turkey juices, because what makes gravy is the fat. So you're putting all those turkey juices in there. Now, let's say you have a free range organic turkey, those fatty acids in there are going to be pretty healthy fatty acids. So it's not really as bad if you got a unhealthy turkey. But there are other alternatives, like there's, I think you were talking about a mushroom gravy. You want to go into that?
Well, yeah, basically you just overcook mushrooms, right? And until it becomes very, saucy, and you can even strain the mushrooms when you're done, or you can even blend them into the broth that you make with it. And that kind of gives it that the kind of meat quality to it. That when I say meat quality, I mean like, when you think about your taste buds, and I know there's different names for them, but I think the word is aname or adame. There's a name for that part of
Mhm.
your tongue where it's satisfied by meaty type of flavors, and that mushroom satisfies that. So if
Mhm.
somebody is trying to go meat free, mushroom broth is a really healthier alternative, that still satisfies that meat kind of flavor, if I can explain it in any other way. Do you know what I'm talking about when I talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
the taste buds?
Yeah, that's great. Also, I do have turkey gravy. I don't eat a ton of it, but I'm gluten free and dairy free myself. So I always make it gluten free and dairy free. So how you can do it is you just add rice flour instead of the wheat flour, and you can make an awesome gravy out of that.
And
So
that kind of thickens it up a little bit.
thickens it up and makes it into a gravy for you. Rolls. So that's a really hard one. I mean, it's not necessarily a really healthy option. I know they're really awesome and tasty. I have no problem with people having them, except if they have like a gluten sensitivity or something like that. It's probably not the best option to do during the holidays. But if you periodically have rolls just during the holiday time, I think it's totally fine and good. Probably the best option would get more of an organic whole wheat and add that to your rolls. That's going to be a much healthier option than just the white flour rolls there.
For me, when I have rolls at the holidays, it makes me so bloated. Like, I look like I'm 3 months pregnant, from the bloating. I found eating like a true sourdough bread with the meal, it helps me with, the desire for
Yeah.
that bread. I like sourdough, like a real sourdough. And when I say that, I'm kind of a sourdough snob.
Yeah.
But most stores, when you look at the ingredients of the sourdough breads that you have in the standard like grocery store in America, it's garbage. It's not,
Mhm.
it doesn't even have a sourdough starter. It's full of, additives and like folic acid and all this garbage that's in there. But you can find a true sourdough either obviously by making it. But some of these like more health, whole food types of grocery stores will have like a real sourdough. When I say that, I mean like five ingredients, like a
Yeah.
sourdough starter, you've got your, the wheat, some salt, those types of ingredients. And what I like about it is if you actually have a real sourdough starter in your bread, the sourdough starter actually eats up the gluten. Now it doesn't make it. I
Yeah.
wouldn't trust it as gluten free, but I
Mhm.
would definitely trust it as lower gluten. And that's why a true sourdough bread isn't soft. It's a little harder. So I'll toast
Mhm.
it. I'll add some butter to it, grass fed, like you suggest. And then I can use it, with my salad or, dipping it in the gravy and those types of things. And
Yeah.
it's fun. And I don't get bloated from it. And that's how I work around the holiday roll situation.
Yeah. It's a lot of people like to add things to rolls. So some things I do as alternatives there is I like a raw honey, good and healthy choice. Also, I like to do a jelly that is actually just made out of fruit. So there's a lot of companies making this now. It's pure fruit, no added sugar to there, and that's a good option also.
We'll make sure and put that in the description box and let us know what you think. Give us a like if you really enjoyed these tips. Let us know your thoughts on some of the things that we talked about. And if you have any alternatives that you and your family, do as well, please share them with us. This is
Mhm.
a community, and we want to be, helpful to everyone, and share the knowledge, share the body of knowledge that we've come to with healthy eating. For anybody that does want to talk to you specifically, Jake, on maybe some of their health issues, maybe there's a special diet that they need to get on based on what they're going through, how can they get a hold of you?
So yeah, you get a hold of me by visiting my website, integrativemedica.com, find my phone number, give that phone number a call, and you'll talk to my lovely receptionists that we have, and they're able to set up a visit with me or some of my great other doctors that we have at the clinic.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Dr. Jake, and everyone else. We'll see you next week.
Hey, Dr. Jake, thank you for your time today. And if you enjoyed the show, then do us a favor and leave a review. It helps more people to find the show, which could save their life. And remember, this is a podcast and should not replace personalized attention from a medical professional like Dr. Jake. If you or someone you know has been diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, cancer of any stage, or a life-changing illness, visit our website today and schedule a virtual appointment with one of our doctors who can lead you to a treatment plan in your area. That's integrativemedica.com. Integrative, Medica.com.
Thank you for listening to the Integrative Medica podcast with Dr. Jake. To hear past episodes and get alerts for the future, subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting platform and be sure to follow us on YouTube as well. Just search for Integrative Medica with Dr. Jake.